Eating disorder recovery can feel really mysterious at times, like it's a switch we're meant to flick on or off. But the reality is, it's not as quick or as linear as that. It has lots of twists and turns and it does take time. So today I thought, let's sit down in my gym gear and just do a quick chatty video on 3 of the top signs I see when somebody's finally in recovery. Number 1, intrusive thoughts about food dwindling. Don't get me wrong, no matter what your eating disorder, it takes a long time for those intrusive thoughts about food, diet and exercise to dwindle completely. But certainly when we're in recovery, not only are we more aware of them coming up, but also we might start to see them less and less. Though this might sound like a really obvious one to point out, in reality it's actually one that people often miss because it happens so gradually over time. And because it happens so gradually, we blink and we miss it. So for those of you with binge eating disorder, that might mean that you're thinking less about every next meal you're going to have or every next binge you're going to have. You might be planning binges less or even just binging less altogether. Similarly, for those of us with bulimia, we're going to start seeing ourselves binging less and therefore purging less as a result. For those of us with orthorexia symptoms, we might see thoughts of good and bad foods dwindling and a less fear-based approach to eating processed foods. For ARFID, maybe you're seeing yourself feeling less fearful of complex or colourful foods, trying things out more. So regardless of your eating disorder, you're going to see those intrusive thoughts about avoidance, binging, safety, cleanness start to dwindle. So check in with yourself. Are your thoughts about food, diet and exercise as strong as they used to be, or are they starting to lessen, to soften? Number 2. An awareness of your triggers. As eating disorders are a mechanism to help us deal with unprocessed trauma, we might be seeing our triggers much more clearly. A large part of effective eating disorder recovery involves trauma recovery. Triggers, whether big or small, can really push us back into a relapse, so identifying what they are and dealing with them effectively, or just avoiding them, can be so impactful when we're in recovery. Awareness is such a significant part of recovery, and especially trauma recovery, so if you're starting to acknowledge your triggers, that's probably a really good sign. Remember that trauma triggers can come in all forms. They can be people, places, things, objects, smells, sensations, they can be anything at all. There's no real limit to what a trigger could be. So if you're already acknowledging your triggers, you're much further away from a significant relapse than you might think. Number 3, engaging in life. This might sound like a really strange one, but as our eating disorder is such a significant coping mode, it can really block us from engaging in the things that bring us joy or even just trying new things. And that's not limited to food. If you can think back to when you were deep in your eating disorder, and certainly I can remember the times where I wasn't engaging in my hobbies, I wasn't wanting to learn new things, have different experiences. And that's because the goal of my eating disorder was to keep me safe. So whilst the function of our eating disorder is to try and keep us emotionally safe, it can almost wrap us and bubble wrap metaphorically, feeling like it's suffocating us. If you're seeing yourself branching out into the world, enjoying new experiences, allowing yourself to fail, that's usually a really key sign that you could be in recovery. Before we engage with trauma recovery, things that can feel quite frightening or threaten our emotional safety can involve failure from trying new things, having adverse emotions or experiences because they trigger those trauma behaviours and thoughts, and even simply fear. When we're deep in our eating disorder and it's become such a normalised part of our life, it's hard to even imagine that we could recover. But if you're engaging in any of these 3 areas, and there's many more aside that, there's a really good chance that you've stepped into the recovery bubble. Please remember that recovery does take time. It can involve steps forwards and steps backwards. Being kind and compassionate to yourself and your past self is so vital. And of course, if you're thinking about going into recovery and looking for a professional, please choose a professional like myself who is registered with an accrediting body. And of course, head over to my website to find my 6-week online recovery courses. These courses have been designed with people taking their first steps into recovery in mind, and certainly it's what I would have wanted when I was heading into that space. If you have enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. It really helps other eating disorder warriors on the platform know that I exist. I'll see you soon, Recovery Warrior.